In a recent interview over at Famitsu, both Nomura and Kitase, who are heading the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, were talking at great length and in great detail, answering a lot of questions and concerns, and just kind of delving into all the aspects of Final Fantasy VII Remake that we were wondering about ever since it was first unveiled and up to the gameplay trailer that was just released. Now, one of the things that was brought up, which they actually, when talked about a lot more, was that this will be episodic, and they gave their reasoning for why it was episodic. I'd actually just made a video about it because I had seen the news last night, then this information came to light, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just go and re-record and re-upload talking about this. But they had said that the reasoning for them making this episodic is because they're trying to get the game out as quickly as possible, that they want to go into much more detail and make a lot more content rather than just make Final Fantasy VII and then put it out there, a more condensed version of Final Fantasy VII. And then they were talking about the constraints of storage being an issue, which I have to call bullshit on that, because a Blu-ray and the multiple tiers of Blu-ray, those fuckers get pretty damn massive, and you can't tell me that Square Enix can't just bust that to Blu-ray and then just call it a day. If for whatever reason they manage to fill one entire multi-layered Blu-ray disc, which I don't see happening ever. But if they did, that's not out of the question, and the manufacturing cost for it would not be catastrophic or through the roof, so I don't want to fucking hear shit about that. I think that was just some BS reasoning. That's me, though. But the other reasons, I'm fine with and more than willing to accept. So, them saying that they want to get this out sooner makes a lot of sense, considering that we got to see a gameplay trailer with English voice acting in it. English voice acting, for anybody who knows, whenever there's Japanese game development going on, when they plan on releasing it domestically out in the West, that's like one of the last things that they fuck with is the translation process, let alone doing voice acting for it. Like, that's dead fucking last. The fact that they already have this worked on, and everything that was showcased was the very beginning of the game whenever you're taking on one of the fucking things for Shinra, well, that kind of says to me that they've got this shit up and running and ready to go. Now, if them talking about they want to go into greater detail and expand upon the universe, so to speak, and go into areas of Midgard that you've never been to, I'm assuming a lot of new areas on the world map, assuming that there's going to be a world map, because they didn't clarify whether or not something like that is going to exist. I'm hoping so, just because for exploration purposes, I fucking enjoy having that, because there's lots of little side areas that are optional, and it just feels nice. It fleshes out the world. Even if it's something that's just basic as shit, the fact that it's there is what matters the most. So taking it out isn't really going to aid them in any way, but you never know. Still, them saying that they want to go and make this game bigger and more fleshed out, I'm all for. One of the concerns that I had, though, is with this being episodic, it could cost people a lot of fucking money. You figure, if you're paying per episode, that can turn into a shit ton of cash, and comes off as greedy. Nobody wants to go and just hand you fucking like $200, $300, $400 for a Final Fantasy VII Remake. Granted, people will because it's the Final Fantasy VII Remake, but you shouldn't do something like that. To me, I would view this more as a season pass, sort of. Just charge $60, and then when the episodes get released, they automatically download to your system. You're good to go. That would be fine, but you've got to make sure that you do not have this big lull in between all the releases of the episodes, because if this turns into some shit where it's like several months, or even a fucking month for that matter, in between episodes being released, that's a good way to just kill your audience retention. People will forget about the game, they won't be as interested, especially when you're trying to bring in a new audience. Role-playing games are massive in scope, and you can pour hours upon hours into them. I have several games where not only have I played for more than 70 hours, I've put in over 100 hours. On a couple of them, there's like several I can think of that I put in over 200 hours. Pure gameplay, not just leaving that shit on. But Final Fantasy VII is our gargantuan game. It is fucking massive. But I don't think it's so massive that's going to take up an entire Blu-ray disc. Even with how great they have theirs looking and how detailed this world could be, I still think that they could go and fit this onto one disc. That's the fucking truth. If not, fuck it. Bust out 2 discs. Make this like, I don't know, a bigger, thicker, beefier, so strong. Blu-ray little case theme, Bob. You already get the fucking idea. So, thinking about this in those kind of terms, that it's going to be episodic, is this a make or break situation for some people? You figure, look at the Telltale games. They've been releasing those episodic for a long ass time right now, and they've worked splendidly. You figure that they've been putting those out for how many years now? It's been at least like 5+ years. And, you know, between Back to the Future, they've got the Walking Dead games, they have The Wolf Within, they've got the upcoming Batman game. They've done a lot, and I've loved them to death. I think that company is absolutely fantastic, and I want to see them work on a ton of other different IPs. Tons. Just because their way of storytelling works really well, and it lends itself greatly to some of these properties. So them episodic, that works just fine. When Resident Evil Revelations was released episodically, people were up in arms about it, freaking the fuck out, and they thought it was going to be the end of the world. Except for it didn't cost nearly as much as they thought it was going to. It was actually $40 versus a traditional $60. Well, shit. It's cheaper than a traditional game, so that was kind of cool. They came out with the episodes very quickly, and then released everything in one package. That's the thing that I hope for most with Final Fantasy VII Remake, is that we get all of this in one package. That's what I want most out of this entire deal, and that is something that could be the make or break situation for a lot of fans out there. Whether they love this or they hate this or whatever it is, when you tell them that no, you're just going to be relegated to just downloading these in chunks, and that's all that you're going to get, that's fucked. That in no way is going to make anybody happy, and trust me, if you're trying to go and appease a fanbase who's been waiting patiently, and the only reason that this is happening is because they are so dedicated and so fucking loyal to this, and you do some shit like that, that's a good way to fucking bury yourself. You might as well just jump in the goddamn hole with a shovel and just go to work. Hell, go to the Earth's fucking core if need be, because you're gonna be digging for quite a while with that kind of hole and that kind of a fucking riot that'll be on your hands. You don't want an angry mob like that. Trust me, you don't. So, they gotta keep the price down. Literally, bust out $60, just download the episodes like that. There was something positive that I was thinking about this that could help a whole bunch and lend itself to the development staff, and that's they would get a lot more time to create things. So they could go into Final Fantasy Before Crisis, Final Fantasy Crisis Core, Final Fantasy Advent Children, Final Fantasy Dirge of Cerberus. They could take shit from all these, and granted, I already know that 2 of those occurred in events past Final Fantasy VII, but it doesn't mean that you can't just, give somebody an inkling of what's going to end up happening. You know, just an Easter egg, just some shit of, this is this area, and that's this area, and these are those characters before all that shit went down. Or even just references and nods to it. And then all the stuff that happened in the past, I mean, bringing that full front and center, I mean, that's perfect. You know, I like that idea a whole bunch, and they were speaking about they don't want to go in, completely fuck up the game by remaking every single thing. It's still going to be the same exact game with all the important parts intact in terms of, I'm assuming, the story and the characters and the world, but there are certain things that they are going to take out, and that's where I was a little bit worried, but I've realized, even as much of a fan of Final Fantasy VII as I am, there's certain things that could be taken out and no one's going to give a shit at all. Okay, that section where you're running along the fucking roller coaster and shit, if that got taken out of the game, no one's going to care. At fucking all. That's the truth of the matter. You can go and take that out, who's going to even think about it? No one. You wanna know why? Because it was unimportant and irrelevant. You know, just tiny, subtle little details. If they took out just dumb shit, fine, whatever. So long as what they're adding into it makes this even better. I want this to be a faithful recreation of the entire world of Final Fantasy VII, of all the characters in Final Fantasy VII, of the story of FF7. That's what I want to see, but I want it to be a lot more. You figure that FF7 to date, right now, has sold, what, about 15 million copies total, including PC and PSN releases and all the other shit. Now it's on PS4, which I also went and got it. Dude, that fucking theme is the shit. I don't give a fuck what anybody says, the Final Fantasy VII theme, it's just, it's fucking radical tits. Trust me on that. It just, it made me fucking jump for joy. But anyway, this needs to add in a lot more content, and they said that's what they plan on doing. So I'm happy with that. Doing it episodic might allow them to go do such a thing. Just imagine if they add in new characters to this game. Like, if they had a little section, like this episode is, you get to play through an entire section of the game as the Turks. Because you get to control 3 people the entire time, which they did confirm that it is an active time battle system, that it's less actiony than you think that it is. Because there's people who were noticing certain things that were on screen. They were like, well, what about this and what about that? And they came forward and they were like, okay, look, the city is like super duper over-top action. Then Kingdom Hearts. Final Fantasy VII is even less than that because they said it's still strategic. So I'm thinking that you run around in real time and then you get to input your commands and then you have a bunch of flashy, crazy shit that occurs. That kind of reminds me of the Star Ocean games. Truthfully, so that's what I'm kind of seeing out of this, where it's not just every single action input is going to translate to a command on screen, similar to like fighting games, hack and slash games, and all that shit. So it's still going to have that whole strategic shit that we've seen in turn-based combat, just now you're controlling where the character's moving around, dodging attacks and trying to set themselves up maybe for a behind attack and do more damage and shit. That's fine. So nobody should really even have an issue with the battle system anymore, but you already know people are going to complain anyway because they didn't decide to be fucking lazy with the battle system, just do turn-based, because guess the fuck what, it would be lazy if they did it that way. Sorry, that's the fucking truth of the matter. Granted, I love turn-based combat, always have, always will, and it works like a fucking charm, but they're evolving this shit. Do you think that back in 1997, if they had today's technology, they'd be doing turn-based combat? I can fucking assure you they wouldn't. It was just because that's what was available, and that's what they were capable of, with having a general focus on the story, the world, the characters, which is always, for me and many others out there, going to be the most important thing to a role-playing game. So, to get things straight, we have them releasing an episodic. If done right, it'll be just fine. If they're getting this game out a lot faster, like, imagine if they start releasing the episodes throughout all of next year. And then the final release of it, everything culminated together, will be in 2017. That might make a lot of sense. You figure an entire year's worth of getting Final Fantasy VII episodes so long as there isn't a gigantic gap in between going and picking these episodes up, and they aren't charging you through the fucking nose, because that'll be ripping fans off, and that is fucking bullshit. That's an easy way to keep people from avoiding the episodes and just waiting. Truthfully, that's what I've done with all the Telltale games, and even with Resident Evil Revelations too. As much as I'll want to go and check shit out, I'd rather just have the entire thing, because I don't like when a game is dictating how much of it I'm going to play and how much of it I'm going to enjoy, then I have to sit on my hands and just kind of wait. Same thing with TV shows. I'll wait. I don't need to see an episode as soon as it comes out. I'll marathon that bitch and watch episode after episode after episode after episode. Same thing with this. I can sit down for at least 8 hours at a time and play through an RPG. You know, granted, I don't get to as much nowadays, being a fucking adult with tons and tons of responsibilities and shit that I have to go and adhere to, but it's something that every so often I get the chance, and I would make time for an FF7 remake. That's the truth. When Resident Evil 2 Remake comes out, I will be making time for it. There's certain things that you just look at and be like, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing with all my spare time. The weather's fucking cold, sure as shit I'm going to be staying inside and playing some stuff. But now this has me kind of stoked and excited over the prospect of being able to play this game a lot sooner and seeing how fun it looked. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. Just don't fuck this up. You cannot afford to fuck up a game of this magnitude. That's unthinkable. That's an easy way to sink your own ship. You figure that you're on this upswing of momentum and winning back a lot of people that were thinking that you pretty much just went the way of the dodo and kind of just killed yourself. You know, as a company. Fucking career suicide and all that shit from just doing stupid ass shit. Kind of like Final Fantasy 13. Dun 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 dun! But now you've got this going. Granted, it's being released episodically, but if it's done right, it's really not a bad thing when I think about it, and that's the truth. I thought the same thing when I looked at, you know, a lot of other games, but then as kind of came to terms with it, was like, it's not all that bad. Really, truthfully, it's not. And if they plan on using this to give themselves a lot more time for the development cycle to be expanded upon so they can put more shit into it. More enemies, more areas for you to explore, more side quests. If they're using it to do shit like that, there's no fucking problem with it. So long as That's what they're doing with it, and they're making this the big-ass game that it needs to be. That's all people really want. I don't want this to be like a linear experience similar to like 13. That was one of the things that people fucking loathed and hated about it. Give me my fucking world map. Give me lots of areas to explore. I want to be able to walk into a city and just look at the skyline and be fucking amazed at it. You know, I want to see the full scope of these cities. I want to be able to go inside buildings that I've seen numerous different times. I want to see more fleshed out narrative for all these characters that, you know, they only touched upon just briefly. I want to see even the side characters have a lot more backstory to them. You know, Vincent and Yuffie, they had backstory to them. Expand upon that shit. You know, I want to see more stuff when it comes to Sid. I would like to see more stuff when it even comes to Kate Sith, getting all fucking tongue-tied. Red 13, all the characters. Get the entire cast and crew together. Also, there needs to be, like, a much bigger explanation of the shit that happens with the date with Barrett at the Golden Saucer. And also, gift one for Sid. I feel like Sid would go and bitch out Cloud at some point, telling him to get his goddamn tea. So, I'm just saying, I think that shit will happen. The fact that they confirmed that the cross-dressing scene is going to be intact with this, I'm giddy over this shit, because I think it's hilarious. I do. I want it to be one of those things where the Dawn rolls up and he's like, man, you're pretty fucking hot. He goes to just, like, grip up on that stench trench and all. He's got a big old handful of Mr. Strife, and he's like, oh no. And then he Buster Sword straight to the fucking jaw and fucks his shit up. I want to see a lot more summons. I want to see so many more side quests. I just want to see so much more, and they have the opportunity to do such, and it sounds like that's what they want to do. They want to keep on just expanding this world. Do that. Just do it right. Saying that it's episodic, it's worrisome, but that doesn't mean that it's completely damning. Just given all the things that I've said, trust me, it can be good if done right. I am appreciative as fuck that they came forward and even talked about it in an interview at length that they did, because they didn't really have to, and they could just leave it up to everybody's imagination, then just drop the bomb and not even fucking say anything, which would fuck them over, that's the truth. But being transparent about it and explaining things, I'm happy. I'm happy. The whole thing about the storage capacity I still think is bullshit, and that's the fucking truth. I think that was kind of a cop-out to just, like, give yourself a fucking, like, oh, this is an easy out. Now I don't have to worry about it. Ah, we fucking know, man. So, with it being episodic, assuming that it's done right, are you okay with that? Assuming that it's not going to be bullshit, that they really are going to make this extremely detailed, that they are going to be making this world even bigger, that they're going to be going fucking balls deep and making this a true living Final Fantasy VII world. How do you feel about this? Either way, this is AlphaOmegaSin, as always, nerds, nerdettes, and gamers. Game the fuck on.